Why are Sri Lankans protesting in the streets? There have now been violent scenes in Sri Lanka, with mobs targeting the homes of prominent political figures including the ruling Rajapaksa family. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa has resigned over the government's handling of the island nation's worst economic crisis since gaining independence from Britain in 1948. However, his brother is refusing to step down as president. Protests over rising prices and shortages flared up in early April in the capital, Colombo, and have grown in size and spread across the country. People are furious because the cost of living has become unaffordable. Food prices started rising in late 2021, and people are now paying up to 30% more for food than a year ago. This has forced many people to skip meals. There are also fuel shortages and power cuts, and a lack of medicines has brought the health system to the verge of collapse. Protesters attempted to storm the Prime Minister's official residence while Mahinda Rajapaksa was inside, and have attacked Rajapaksa family houses elsewhere in Sri Lanka. The family has played a prominent role in Sri Lankan politics for years, occupying top positions in various administrations. Mahinda Rajapaksa was president during the country's long-running civil war, which ended with the defeat of the Tamil Tiger rebels in 2009. His younger brother, Gotabaya, who served as defense minister at that time, is now Sri Lanka's president. Gotabaya has said he has no intention of quitting as president, and last week declared a state of emergency. Two other siblings, Basil and Jamal Rajapaksa, who held key positions in government, resigned last month as the crisis in the country worsened. And Namal, one of Mahinda Rajapaksa's sons, did the same, quitting his government post. Sri Lanka's problems come down to the fact that its foreign currency reserves have virtually run dry. The country is heavily reliant on imports, but can no longer afford to pay for staple foods and fuel. The government blames the COVID pandemic, which all but killed off Sri Lanka's tourist trade, one of its biggest foreign currency earners. It also says tourists were frightened off by a series of deadly bomb attacks on churches 3 years ago. However, many experts say economic mismanagement is to blame. At the end of its civil war in 2009, Sri Lanka chose to focus more on its domestic markets instead of selling to foreign ones. So income from exports remained low, while the bill for imports kept growing. Nowadays, Sri Lanka imports $3 billion, £2.3 billion, more than it exports every year. The government also racked up huge debts with countries including China, to fund what critics have called unnecessary infrastructure projects. At the end of 2019, Sri Lanka had $7.6 billion, £5.8 billion, in foreign currency reserves. However, by March 2020, its reserves had dwindled to only $1.93 billion, £1.5 billion. Finance Minister Ali Sabri recently said the bulk of these reserves were not usable, leaving just $50 million, £40.5 million, at the country's disposal. Populist policies have also been blamed for worsening the situation. When he came to power in 2019, President Rajapaksa decided to offer big tax cuts. This means the government now has less money to buy foreign currency. Mr. Rajapaksa now admits the tax cuts were a mistake, and Finance Minister Ali Sabri has said they resulted in an estimated loss of more than $1.4 billion, £1.13 billion, in government revenue. When Sri Lanka's currency shortages became a really big problem in early 2021, the government tried to stop the outflow of foreign currency by banning all imports of chemical fertilizer, telling farmers to use organic fertilizers instead. This led to widespread crop failures. Sri Lanka had to supplement its food stocks from abroad, which made its foreign currency shortage even worse. An IMF report in March this year said the fertilizer ban, reversed in November 2021, had also hurt tea and rubber production, leading to potentially substantial export losses. Since then, the government has banned the import of a wide range of non-essential items, from cars to certain types of food and even shoes. The government also refused to let the Sri Lankan rupee fall against other currencies in order to boost exports. It finally did so in March 2022, and the rupee fell more than 30% against the dollar. Sri Lanka's government has racked up $51 billion, £39 billion, in foreign debt. This year, it will be required to pay $7 billion, £5.4 billion, to service these debts, with similar amounts for years to come. In April, the Sri Lankan government failed to make repayments totaling $78 million. Credit rating agency S&P called this a selective default. It was the first time Sri Lanka had defaulted on its foreign debts since independence. Sri Lanka is seeking emergency loans of $3 billion to pay for essential imports such as fuel. The World Bank has agreed to lend it $600 million. India has committed $1.9 billion and may lend it an additional $1.5 billion for imports. The government is also seeking a bailout from the International Monetary Fund (IMF), and talks on this are continuing. The IMF has said the government must raise interest rates and taxes as a condition for a loan, which would make the country's cost of living crisis worse. Sri Lanka owes $6.5 billion to China, and the two are in talks on how to restructure the debt. China earlier agreed to bolster Sri Lanka's foreign currency reserves by swapping the Lankan rupee for its currency, the renminbi. Since then, it has signaled its displeasure over Colombo approaching the IMF for help.